Hey everyone, welcome back to the AWS Certified Developer Associate series. I'm Alex, and today we are tackling Domain 2, Security. That is roughly 13 questions, so getting this right is crucial for passing. Now, before we dive in, here's something important. The exam guide specifically states that administering IAM users and groups is out of scope. You're not being tested as a sysadmin. You are being tested as a developer. So we are focusing on how you implement security in your applications and not how you manage users. In this video, I'll give you a high-level review of all security concepts that you need to know, organized by 3 main task statements from the exam guide. Then I'll tell you exactly what to study deeper on your own. Think of this as your roadmap. I'll show you the landscape, but you'll know exactly where to explore next. We're covering Authentication and Authorization, Encryption Implementation, and managing sensitive data in code. Let's get started. Let's start with IAM for developers. Task statement number 1 is all about implementing authentication and authorization. First up, IAM roles. This is the way your applications authenticate with AWS, not IAM users, not access keys, IAM roles. When your Lambda function needs to access S3, or your EC2 instance needs to write to DynamoDB, you attach an IAM role. The exam tests this concept a lot. Now, policies. You need to understand 3 types of policies: identity-based policies attached to roles or users, resource-based policies attached to resources like S3 buckets, and service policies control what services can do. Here's the distinction that shows up in exams a lot. AWS managed policies versus customer managed policies. AWS managed policies are maintained by AWS. They are ready to use but less flexible. Customer managed policies are the ones you create for specific needs. Know when to use each. And the golden rule that appears in almost every security question, the principle of least privilege. Always grant the minimum permissions that the application needs. If your Lambda only needs to read data from S3, don't give it write permissions. The exam will test if you can identify overly permissive policies. Next critical concept is AWS Security Token Service, or STS. STS generates temporary credentials with an expiration time. This is a security best practice because if credentials are compromised, they automatically expire. The most important STS API call is assume role. This is how applications get temporary credentials to assume an IAM role. Your Lambda function calls assume role API, gets temporary credentials, and uses them to access resources. These credentials include an access key, secret key, and session token. All these are required. Cross-account access is another exam favorite. For example, company A needs to access resources on the company B's account. Assume role with a trust policy. The exam will test you if you understand this pattern. Now let's talk about Amazon Cognito. And this is probably the most tested distinction in Domain 2. User pools versus identity pools. Cognito uses user pools to handle authentication. That is sign up, sign in, password reset. Think of it as your user directory. Users authenticate and get a JWT token. Cognito identity pools handle authorization. They give your authenticated users temporary AWS credentials to access AWS services directly. So a mobile application user can upload files directly to S3 without going through your backend. Here's how you remember it. User pools. Who are you? Identity pools. What can you access? The exam will give you scenarios and you need to pick up the right one. User needs to log in, user pools. User needs to upload to S3 from a mobile app, identity pools. Sometimes you use both together. And a little about federation protocols. SAML is for enterprise identity providers like Active Directory. OIDC is for social identity providers like Google or Facebook. Bearer tokens like JWT are used to prove authentication. They contain claims about the user encoded in JSON. On the exam, if you see corporate SSO or enterprise login, think of SAML. If you see Facebook login or Google login, think of OIDC with Cognito. Moving to statement 2, implementing encryption. And the star of the show is AWS Key Management Service, or KMS. KMS manages encryption keys for you. There are two types you need to know: AWS managed keys and customer managed keys. AWS managed keys are automatic. When you enable default encryption to an object, AWS creates and manages the key. You do not need to see it, you don't control it, but it works. They are free and automatically rotated by AWS. Customer managed keys, the ones that you control. You create them, you set permissions with the key policies, and you decide when to rotate them. They cost money, but they give you flexibility, like using the same key across multiple services or sharing keys across accounts. Key rotation is another exam topic. For example, for customer managed keys, you can enable automatic rotation. AWS creates new key material every year, but keeps old versions to decrypt old data. The exam will ask you when automatic rotation and when manual rotation makes sense. Next up is cross-account encryption. You can share customer managed keys with other AWS accounts using key policies. The exam likes scenarios when account A encrypts some data and account B needs to access that. Encryption comes in two flavors: at rest and in transit. We need to know both. Encryption at rest means data is encrypted when stored. S3 has three options. SSE S3 uses S3 managed keys. Super simple, just enable it. SSE KMS uses KMS keys. Gives you audit trails in CloudTrail. Means customer provided keys. You manage the keys outside of AWS. For the exam, if they mention audit requirements, think SSE KMS. Lambda environment variables can be encrypted with KMS. This is how you protect sensitive configuration. Encryption in transit means data is encrypted during transmission. This is TLS or SSL. AWS Certificate Manager or ACM provisions and manages SSL certificates for you. Use ACM with API Gateway, CloudFront, load balancers. The exam might ask, do you need to manually renew ACM certificates? No, AWS handles renewal automatically for ACM managed certificates if they are active. And lastly, client-side encryption. It means that your application encrypts data before sending it to AWS. Server-side encryption, AWS encrypts data when it receives it. Know the difference. Client-side gives you more control over encryption but adds more complexity. Task statement number 3, managing sensitive data. This is all about keeping secrets out of your code. Two services you need to compare: AWS Secrets Manager and Systems Manager Parameter Store. Secrets Manager is a paid service designed specifically for secrets like database passwords and API keys. The killer feature is automatic rotation. You can set up Secrets Manager to automatically rotate, for example, RDS database passwords on a schedule. It also versions secrets so you can roll back if needed. Use Secrets Manager when you need automatic rotation or when security requirements justify the cost. Parameter Store is part of AWS Systems Manager and it has a free tier. It stores configuration data and secrets. For secrets, you can use secure string parameter encrypted with KMS. Parameter Store supports hierarchies. You can organize parameters like /prod, /db, /password. Use Parameter Store when you need cost-effective configuration management or when you don't need automatic rotation. Here's the exam decision tree. Database passwords that need automatic rotation, Secrets Manager. Configuration parameters or cost is a concern, Parameter Store. Both are better than hard coding credentials. which is what you should never do. Lambda environment variables are a common way to pass configuration, but here's what you need to know for the exam. You can encrypt them with KMS for additional security. By default, Lambda encrypts them with AWS managed keys, but you can specify your own CMK for more control. AWS app config is for dynamic configuration. Unlike parameter store where you retrieve values on a startup, app config tells you change configuration without redeploying your application. Think feature flags or tuning application behavior in real time. The exam might ask, how do you change config value without redeploying? App config. There is another service with a similar name in AWS, AWS config. That is something different. Just remember that what you need for application configuration is app config, not AWS config. And the cardinal rule, secure credentials handling means using IAM roles and secret management services. Never hardcode access keys in your code. Never commit secrets to Git. The exam will test if you can identify insecure patterns. Last concept in this section is data classification and sanitation. Personal identifiable information, PII, means things like names, email addresses, social security numbers. PHI is protected health information, medical records, and health data. Know these terms for the exam. The practical application, don't log sensitive data. When you are debugging, it's tempting to log everything, but CloudWatch logs might capture personal identifiable information. The exam will test your judgment. Should you log user password or not? Absolutely not. Should you log request IDs? Yes, that's fine. Sanitation means masking or redacting sensitive data. Show the last 4 digits of the credit card, not 16. Hash sensitive fields before logging. The exam wants to see you understand these protective practices. Alright, let's make this practical with the decision framework for the exam. For authentication choices, if the question says users need to log in or sign up, that's Cognito user pools. If users need direct access to AWS from a mobile app or web app, that's Cognito identity pools. If it mentions corporate SSO or enterprise, that's SAML federation. And crucially, if an application needs access to AWS services, not user but your code, that's always an IAM role, never access keys. For authentication choices, if they mention audit trails or tracking key usage, you need a customer managed key with a CloudTrail logging. If it's simple encryption without special requirements, AWS managed keys are fine. If you need to share encryption across accounts, you need a customer managed key with key policies. For secret storage, database credentials that need automatic rotation, that is about secrets manager. Configuration parameters or cost matters, that is parameter store. And this is important. Never choose any option that hardcodes credentials or stores them in plain text. That's always wrong on the exam and in real life. These decision frameworks will save you time when reading exam questions. Let me give you 7 scenarios that appear in the exam in various forms. Scenario 1. Lambda needs to access S3 and DynamoDB. Solution. Create an IAM role with specific permissions for both services. Attach it to the Lambda function, not access keys. Scenario 2. Web application needs user authentication. Solution. Cognito user pools for sign up and sign in. Scenario 3. Mobile app needs to let users upload photos directly to S3. Solution. Cognito identity pools to give temporary AWS credentials. Number 4. Store database password securely with automatic rotation. Solution here is Secrets Manager with automatic rotation configured for RDS. And scenario 5. Encrypt S3 objects with a customer key you control. Solution here is customer managed key. Number 6. Application needs temporary credentials to access another account's resources. Solution here is STS assume role with a trust policy. And 7. Multiple applications need the same encryption key. Solution here is to create a customer-managed KMS key, grant permissions to all applications in the key policy. These scenarios show up repeatedly in different contexts. Pattern match them. As a wrap up my thoughts on what and how to study, here's your priority study order. High priority, spend most of your time here. Understand Cognito implementation deeply. User pools and identity pools. Practice creating IAM roles and writing policies. Use SDKs to encrypt and decrypt with KMS. Practice retrieving secrets from Secrets Manager in OD. And medium priority, learn STS assume role patterns. Understand parameter store versus Secrets Manager trade-offs. Know S3 encryption options. Understand ACM for certificates. Know the concepts. Understand SAML and OIDC basics. Know JWT structure at a high level. Understand key rotation strategies. Know what PII and PHI mean. For hands-on practice, build these. Create Lambda function with an IAM role that accesses S3. Set up a Cognito user pool for a simple web app. Store and retrieve secrets from Secrets Manager using SDK. Encrypt and decrypt data with KMS in your code. Write IAM policies following least privilege. Check the AWS SDK documentation for security sections, the AWS Developer Guide for IAM, Cognito, and KMS. And definitely do the hands-on labs for Domain 2 in the AWS Skills Builder. You've got this. Domain 2 is 26% of your exam. Master these concepts and you are well on your way to passing. Next video, we'll talk about common architecture patterns and how they are applied in the AWS Certified Developer Associate exam. If this was helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for the rest of the series. I'll see you in the next one.